My son told an attorney I was slipping, that I couldn't even manage my own name, let alone my home. 3 days later, I sat across from him at my own coffee table, holding the forged documents he thought I would never see. That was the day I stopped being the dad who always helps, and became the man who would quietly take everything back. Before I go on, let me just say thank you for being here. These stories aren't easy for an old man to tell, but each one carries a piece of my life, and a lesson I learned the hard way. If you feel something in my words, I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe, and let me know where you're listening from. Your support means more than you might think. I start my mornings the same way every day. Slow, quiet, letting the joints warm up before the world asks anything of them. At 74, even pouring a cup of coffee feels like a negotiation, but it's familiar, and it's mine. That Saturday began just like that. Sunlight stretching across the kitchen tiles, the soft hum of the old refrigerator, and the smell of fresh coffee drifting through a house that had known both joy and grief. I remember thinking how steady it all felt. I didn't know how quickly that steadiness would break. I laid out the clothes I planned to wear, a clean button-down, my good brown slacks, and the navy cardigan my late wife Evelyn always said made me look handsome in an old movie way. I could almost hear her saying it. Even after 15 years without her, this house still carried her voice in the corners. That day was supposed to be a good one. My son, Daniel, had invited me for dinner. Said the kids had school projects to show me. Said Marlene was making a roast, just the way you like it, Dad. I'd looked forward to it all week. I even got up before sunrise to bake a cherry cobbler, the same recipe Evelyn handed down to me the year we married. The warm smell filled the house. For a moment, life felt simple again. I made my rounds the way older men do, checking the stove, turning off lights, locking and unlocking the door twice just to be sure. My hands were stiff but steady. I'd been living alone a long time, and I managed my life just fine. As I fastened the wristwatch Evelyn gave me on our 25th anniversary, my phone buzzed sharply against the kitchen counter. A vibration that felt wrong, like it was cutting through the morning. I glanced at the screen. A message from my financial advisor, Gregory Mason. He never texted. Not once in the 22 years he handled my accounts. He was old school, believed texting was how mistakes happened. So seeing his name made something tighten in my gut before I even opened the message. Harold, do not leave the house. Call me immediately. It's urgent. I stared at the words. Even the kitchen light seemed to dim a little. Urgent. Not a word Gregory used lightly. My hands trembled as I called him. He picked up before the first ring finished. Harold, he said. No greeting, no pleasantries. Sit down. I eased into the kitchen chair, the air around me suddenly heavy. I'm sitting. He drew a breath that sounded like it pained him to release. Then he began. 3 days ago, your son came to my firm. He didn't know I handle your accounts myself. He met with one of our junior advisors. Harold, he asked to draft documents transferring all of your assets into his name. For a moment, my heart stopped. Just stopped. Greg continued, careful but firm. Daniel had claimed I was showing signs of early cognitive decline, that I was becoming forgetful, that I needed him to manage things. He prepared a power of attorney, a deed transfer selling my home for $15, authorization to access every account I owned, and he planned to get my signature that afternoon at what I believed was a family dinner, using a notary he and Marlene arranged. My breath hitched, not fast, not loud, just a slow, dull ache inside my ribs. Greg softened his voice. If you go there and sign anything at all, you could lose everything by Monday morning. Your home, your savings, your independence. I looked around my kitchen, the wooden cabinets Evelyn painted blue the summer before she passed. The dented table where Daniel used to build Lego towers. The photos on the wall, our trips, our smiles, our life, all of it. He had planned to take all of it. My throat tightened, but tears didn't come, not yet. Greg finished gently, like he hated the truth he was delivering. Stay home today, Harold. Lock your door. Come to my office Monday morning. We'll protect everything. I nodded, though he couldn't see me. The peace I'd felt when I woke up that morning drained out of the house like warm air through a cracked window. I turned toward the cherry cobbler cooling on the counter. Something inside me sagged. I stood there for a long time, breathing in the silence, letting the truth settle. The morning had begun in quiet comfort. Now the quiet felt different. Sharp, cold, final. I didn't know it then, but that silence was the last true peace I'd feel for a very long time. I sat at the kitchen table long after Greg ended the call, letting the silence press in on me. It wasn't confusion, and it wasn't anger, not yet. It was the kind of silence where the world seems to lean in, waiting for you to understand what's been taken from you. The cherry cobbler cooled untouched on the counter. The cardigan I had laid out stayed folded, untouched. I felt too hollow for hunger, too steady to break, too stunned to move. My phone buzzed again. A softer buzz this time. Daniel? Dad? Everything okay? Dinner's at 4. The kids can't wait. Don't be late. Each word felt like bait on a hook. I set the phone down without answering. By early afternoon, the calls came faster, then messages, then voicemails. Daniel's tone shifted from cheerful to prodding, then to irritated. But I couldn't bring myself to hear his voice. Not after knowing what he planned. Not after realizing how carefully he had rehearsed his concern. Around 3 p.m., a message arrived that cut through the rest. We have the notary coming at 5. Please don't make this difficult. There it was, the truth beneath the smile. My hands went still on the table. The world didn't spin. It simply narrowed until all that remained was the sickening clarity of what he meant to do. I stood up, walked to the trash bin, lifted the lid and dropped the entire cobbler inside. The ceramic dish clattered against the lining, loud and final. Something inside me hardened as it fell. I wasn't feeding people who planned to swallow my life whole. I put away the cardigan and pulled on an old, worn sweater instead. Then I sat in the living room, letting the hours drag across the walls. The drizzle outside softened to mist, then thickened again. The house dimmed slowly around me. At 6 p.m., new messages lit up the screen. Dad, pick up. You're scaring us. If you don't answer, we're coming over. Coming over. To help. To finish what they'd planned. I typed one short message. Feeling sick. Turning off phone. Don't visit. Contagious. A lie, but a necessary one. As the hours stretched, the house felt like a stranger I suddenly recognized. Quiet, old, familiar, but holding secrets in the corners. I sat in my armchair, staring at nothing, thinking of everything. Betrayal doesn't arrive like thunder. It arrives like a whisper, a vibration on a countertop, a message from a man who never texts. The night pressed in. I found myself walking through the house, touching the memories built into the walls, the dent in the hallway where Daniel crashed his bicycle indoors at 12. The kitchen counter where Evelyn and I had kneaded dough together for decades. The edge of the dining table where Daniel carved his initials when he thought no one would notice. I traced that small carving now, DW, with a trembling finger. The boy I raised had vanished somewhere along the way. Replaced by a man who could calculate my worth on paper. I heated a bowl of soup I didn't taste and rinsed the spoon slowly, carefully, as if that simple act could steady my thoughts. But nothing felt steady. When I went to lock the doors for the night, my hand paused on the deadbolt. The thought of Daniel walking in with the key I'd given him years ago. That thought chilled the air around me. I slid the chain across the door, a motion I hadn't done in ages. That night I slept in small pieces. 20 minutes of drifting, then waking. 10 minutes of rest, then the flash of paperwork sliding across a table. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw signatures I hadn't written. Around 3 a.m., I shuffled to the bathroom and turned on the dim light. The mirror reflected a man older than he felt. Tired eyes, gray stubble, a jaw clenched against something he didn't want to believe. He planned it, I whispered. The mirror didn't argue. I walked back to the hallway and lifted the old clay bowl Daniel made when he was 9. The shape crooked, the glaze imperfect, the love genuine. I held it for a moment, then set it gently back. I raised you, I murmured, but I don't know you anymore. Morning came slowly, light shifting through the blinds, dust suspended in the air like tiny drifting truths. And in that drifting silence, something settled in me. Not anger, not grief. A resolve, a still, quiet resolve. I began to think, very carefully. The morning after that restless night felt unnaturally calm, too calm for what lived under my skin. It wasn't peace. Peace is warm, familiar. This was something else, a stillness that reminded me of a frozen lake, quiet on the surface, shifting underneath. I moved through my kitchen slowly, making oatmeal out of habit, not hunger. I rinsed the bowl, turned it upside down in the rack, and wiped my hands on a towel that still smelled faintly of lemon soap. Small motions kept my mind from unraveling. But my mind wasn't drifting anymore. It was sharpening, steady, focused, deliberate. I walked to the kitchen table, pulled out a notepad, and lowered myself into the chair. The pen felt heavier than it should have. Planning isn't easy at 74, but betrayal has a way of waking up parts of you that life once quieted. On the first line, I wrote 3 words: protect, prepare, prevent. Not vengeance, not punishment, just survival with clarity. I wasn't going to hurt Daniel, but I would no longer allow him to hurt me. I opened the drawer where I kept every important document I'd saved. Evelyn's birth certificate, house papers, old warranties, bank letters. One by one, I laid them across the table. The quiet shuffling of paper was steadying. Each document was a piece of the life I had built through 30 years of work, loss, and love. Seeing it all laid out made something inside me tighten. My life was worth protecting. More than Daniel ever realized. My phone buzzed again. "Dad, please call. We're worried." "This isn't like you." I let it buzz until it fell silent. Minutes later, another buzz. "If you don't answer soon, we're coming over. Coming over. To help." To finish what they started. I turned the phone face down, letting the weight of the silence fill the room again. Then I began sorting the papers. Property documents, insurance, financial statements, medical directives. Organizing them wasn't just practical, it was grounding. A reminder that my life was still mine, and that my son's desperation couldn't erase decades of work. Next, I opened a fresh page in the notebook and wrote a second list. New will, new trust, new executor. Words that tasted like loss and necessity all at once. Changing a will isn't just legal paperwork. It's an emotional severing, a quiet acknowledgement that love has limits and trust has boundaries. I sat back, letting the gravity of it settle in my chest. The house felt too still, so I stepped outside into the cold air. The sky hung low and gray, Milwaukee's winter pressing down with a kind of honest chill. The walk to the mailbox gave me a moment to breathe. When I returned inside, I made a cup of chamomile tea, the same kind Evelyn used to drink when the world felt too loud. I carried it to my desk and opened my laptop. My fingers hovered over the keys for a moment before I typed. "Greg, I'm ready to move forward. Let's proceed with all protections we discussed. I'll come in Wednesday." Harold, his reply came quickly. "Good. Everything will be prepared. You're doing what needs to be done." The words were simple, but they steadied me. Halfway through my tea, another thought surfaced, slow, heavy, inevitable. This cannot end with silence. I need to confront him. Not in anger, but in truth. Not today. Not tomorrow. But soon, I opened a small wooden box in the desk drawer. Inside were old keys, faded receipts, and letters Evelyn had written me decades ago. Beneath them was Daniel's spare house key, the one he returned when he moved out. I held it in my palm, running my thumb along the grooves. This key had once symbolized trust. Now it symbolized its absence. I set it on the table beside my notes. Then I walked the hallway, stopping at the framed photos that lined the wall. Evelyn in her garden. Daniel at 5 years old, gap-toothed and proud. Our family at Lake Geneva, smiling in sun-faded colors. I touched each frame, not clinging, not mourning, just recognizing. Then I gathered the evidence Greg had given me, the forged loan application, the draft power of attorney, the deed transfer, the facility placement paperwork. I placed them into separate folders and labeled them with a steady hand. Fraud, property, intent, care. The labels made everything undeniable. By late afternoon, everything I needed was organized into a single stack, 3 folders tied neatly, placed in the center of the coffee table. They sat there like a quiet boundary, a line Daniel had crossed, and one I would never cross back over. At 6 p.m., with the light fading, I sent Daniel a message. "Let's talk on Saturday. Come alone, 2 p.m. It's about the estate." A simple sentence. A simple invitation, but it would change everything. Seconds later, the reply came. "Of course, Dad. Glad you're better. Should Marlene join?" I answered, "Just you." Then I shut my phone off, placed it beside the folders, and sat back. The rain outside had slowed to a soft patter. The house felt still again, but no longer fragile. The stage was set. All I had to do was wait. And as night settled over the house, I realized something quiet and powerful. They had no idea that silence can build walls stronger than words. Saturday arrived with a steady gray drizzle, one of those quiet Midwestern rains that doesn't rush or roar, it just waits. The sky looked tired, and so did I. I hadn't slept much, but my mind felt clearer than it had in weeks. My body carried the weight of age, but my thoughts, they stood tall. I didn't bake. I didn't clean. I didn't dress up. I left the house exactly as it was, plain, unpolished, honest. No pretend warmth, no gestures to soften the truth. By 1:45 p.m., the folders lay neatly arranged on the coffee table. 4 stacks of evidence, each one a quiet confrontation waiting to happen. I settled into my armchair, the same one where I once rocked Daniel through fevers and bad dreams, and folded my hands. At exactly 2 p.m., his car turned into the driveway. Through the thin curtain, I watched him check his reflection in the mirror, straighten his collar, fix his hair. He looked confident, prepared. He had the expression of a man walking into a meeting he believed he already won. He let himself in with his old key. "Dad," he called out, cheerful, practiced. "Good to see you up again. I brought a few papers we should go over. Nothing complicated." I didn't return the smile. "In here," I said. "The living room." He stepped in, that easy charm on his face, the same charm that once softened arguments, deflected consequences, melted my resolve when he was younger. But now it felt like another one of his tools, another part of the plan. "You look good," he said lightly. "We were worried." "Sit down, Daniel." He hesitated, just for a second, but enough to show he sensed something beneath the surface. Then he sat, glancing at the folders. "What's all this? Taxes? Insurance?" "No," I said. "This is the truth. Start with the first one." I slid the folder across the table. He opened it, and the air changed. It was the forged loan application, his handwriting in the margins, my signature printed where it didn't belong. He stared at it until the color drained from his face. "Dad, I can explain." "No," I said softly. "You can tell the truth, or you can stay silent. But there is no explanation for this." His throat tightened. His eyes darted everywhere except toward mine. I slid him the second folder, the draft power of attorney, a false declaration of cognitive decline, the deed transfer selling my house for $15. Each page hit him like a blow he didn't expect. His mouth trembled. His hands shook. "Dad, we were desperate. Marlene lost her job, the mortgage, and the $20,000 in credit card debt." I asked quietly. "The forged signature on the collateral loan? The notary you hired for dinner? The paperwork to put me in a care facility?" His eyes filled, panic rising. "We were drowning. I thought you'd understand. We were going to pay it back. I swear we were." I leaned in slightly, voice steady. "You weren't going to pay me back, Daniel. You were going to take everything I built, everything your mother and I worked for. You were ready to declare me incompetent so you could steal my life." He broke then, not in guilt, in fear. "Dad, please, if you report this, I'll lose everything, my license, my career, the kids." "And what would I have lost?" I asked. Calm, even, unshaken. "If I had walked into your house that afternoon, what would I have lost?" He opened his mouth, but no sound came out, just a small, broken breath. I let the silence stand, let the reality settle between us like dust on old furniture. "You have taken from me your whole adult life," I said quietly. "Money for the car, money for the school, money for the roof, money for the debts, and I gave it because I loved you. But this wasn't asking. This was erasing." He bowed his head, sobbing into his palms, but I felt no anger, only clarity. Slowly, I held out my hand. "Give me my house key." He froze, not in confusion, in understanding. Everything was changing now. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the key, and placed it in my palm, warm from his grip, heavy with years of lost trust. "Next," I said, "understand this. I'm not pressing charges, not because you deserve mercy, but because I refuse to spend the rest of my years explaining to strangers why my son tried to steal my home." He nodded weakly, tears streaking his face. "Third, you are no longer my beneficiary. The will is changed. The trust is sealed. My home, my savings, my estate, you will never touch a cent." A shudder ran through him. "And lastly," I said quietly, "you leave now." "Dad, please, when can I see you again?" I looked at him, really looked at him. A man shaped by my sacrifices and by his own choices. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Maybe one day, but not now. I need to feel safe in my own home." He looked around the room where he learned to walk, where birthdays were celebrated, where his mother once read him bedtime stories. His voice cracked. "I loved you." "No," I said softly. "You loved what I could do for you." He stood there for a moment, silent, then walked out. The door clicked shut, a small sound that felt like a lifetime ending. I locked the deadbolt, slid the chain across, and sat down slowly, breath leaving my lungs in one painful rush. In the quiet that followed, in that deep, settling silence, I finally felt free. Sometimes the loudest moment in life is when you choose not to say another word. The house stayed quiet for a long time after Daniel left. Not the warm quiet I used to know. Morning coffee, soft radio, Evelyn humming in the kitchen. This was a different kind of quiet. A quiet born from truth, from boundaries, from finally choosing myself after a lifetime of choosing others. That night, I took a blanket out to the porch and sat there listening to the last drops of rain fall from the gutters. The streetlights glowed against the wet pavement, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel tense waiting for the next request, the next favor, the next crisis disguised as love. I just sat there, breathing, letting the world be still. In the days that followed, I finalized the trust with Greg. We sealed every account, secured every document, and signed the new will. My estate now goes to a community literacy program, something Evelyn cherished, something Daniel can never reach. A week later, Daniel received the formal notice revoking his inheritance. I didn't see his reaction, but I imagined the shock, the disbelief, the anger, and yet I felt no satisfaction, no triumph, just a quiet acceptance. I had done what I needed to do to protect the years I had left. I joined a support group for people who'd been financially betrayed by family. Walking into that church basement, I expected shame to crush me. Instead, I found 20 people who knew exactly what I felt, kind faces carrying heavy stories. That's where I met Roland and James. 3 old men, each with hearts bruised by people they once trusted. Coffee turned into conversation. Conversation turned into friendship. Slowly, the world softened again. Being betrayed by your child doesn't harden you. No, it empties you first. But once the dust settles, you learn to rebuild on firmer ground. One afternoon, sitting outside a small cafe with Roland and James, I realized something simple and profound. I hadn't lost my son. I had finally seen him clearly. And in seeing him, I found myself again. My routines, my laughter, my independence, my peace, my dignity. Saying the title of my story, my son tried to declare me insane so he could steal my house. Once felt like swallowing glass. Now it feels like naming a storm I finally walked through. Respect, once lost, can be reclaimed if you wait for the right moment and choose yourself with a steady hand. These days I sleep easily, not because life is perfect, but because the truth is finally quiet. And quiet, real quiet, is a kind of peace you can't buy, borrow, or fake. It's earned. If you stayed with me to the end, thank you. Tell me, would you have done what I did? And if you'd like to hear more stories like this one, I'd be grateful if you subscribed.